the world of professional wrestling from coast to coast. A show by members of the Busted Open Nation. Welcome to the Nation's Corner. Here are your hosts, the Nation's Corner crew.
What's up, pro wrestling fans? Welcome to Nation's Corner. I am Front Row, as always. Joining me tonight are two people who are no strangers to hosting. We have Ari Davis and John in South Jersey. What's up, guys?
How's it going, Front Row?
Hey, the Front Row. Pleasure as always.
Always, man. It's been another busy week in the world of pro wrestling. There's been changes.
What the hell are we going to talk about? I don't know, man.
Nothing. I think we're just going to call it a night. And that
yeah, okay, yeah, we're good. We got
Thanks,
this.
y'all. Have a good show.
All right.
Good show.
Thanks
Stay
for
on
coming.
later.
Enjoy the show.
We're gonna jump into SummerSlam in just a few minutes, but there's a bunch of stuff that I wanted to cover. I know you guys talked about the Triple H announcement and stuff last week, and we saw this week on both Raw and SmackDown that the shows were produced and directed by Triple H. We saw pictures of him on headsets. We knew that he was, running the show. But I wanted to get your perspective on what changes have we seen, and sort of what changes do you think that we're going to see in the future from this new producer. And I just also want to make sure that folks understand, as a caveat, Vince McMahon is no longer the CEO and head of creative. Those roles were separated, right? Stephanie McMahon is now the chairwoman and CEO of WWE. So she's handling all the business stuff. Triple H is in charge of creative. So what we see on TV from a content perspective, he's overseeing, but he still answers to Stephanie. So it's interesting to make that note, because I do see a lot of people referring to Triple H as quote unquote the guy in charge, but he's still second in command at this point.
Right.
But where did you go? So Ari, I want to start with you first. What if anything did you see different, and what would you like to see change now that Triple H is producing the show?
There was some minor differences as far as there wasn't as many recaps of what previously happened. So it didn't seem like it was, we were watching the same thing over and over and over again, as much as it normally does. But I don't think there'll be very many changes till after tonight, because they've obviously had to finish storylines up to tonight, and there may not be any changes until after the next pay-per-view. But I would like to see Raw go to more of like a NXT black and gold format.
Interesting. How about you, John?
Definitely very subtle but minor things, even on Monday Night Raw this past week. I didn't expect huge changes right off the bat, especially even tonight being SummerSlam and Raw being the last go-home show of Raw to go for SummerSlam. But there was definitely a difference. First thing was they started off hot. You had a big melee in the middle of the ring with Miz and Logan Paul and all that. And that kind of brought me back to a different era. Definitely not a product we've seen lately, but for them to start off hot like that. And just little continuity things through the show that you could tell that there was definitely somebody different on the headset. And going forward, I think we're going to see more. Not that we're going to be like, wow, that's a huge change. But subtly, I think going forward, you're going to see Vince's handprint less on it and more Triple H's. If you want an example of what I'm talking about, go back and watch any of the NXT old black and gold shows. There's just a real kind of heavy on action, just enough of backstage and vignettes to keep stories going. But I think it's going to be a more wrestling dominated program now.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I saw some data today that would support what you're saying. For the last 3 months, SmackDown is a 2-hour show, and they've averaged 30 to 32 minutes of wrestling per show. Last night's SmackDown had 49 minutes of wrestling. That's right there. There's a huge shift in what we're seeing on screen. So I think, that's a good call up because I think we're going to see a lot more of that too. For me, I saw stuff on Raw. The way that things were shot, the way that they didn't do a lot of jump cuts. In fact, they stayed on the action a lot more in the ring. I felt like the cuts were long. The shots were longer. They didn't do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. It was like if you follow the beats of Raw going into like last month, they were only doing 2-3 seconds a shot, and then they would cut to something else. Both Raw and SmackDown had a lot more stability from a viewer's perspective. You weren't getting that like dizziness trying to watch your wrestling show, right? But I saw,
there weren't as many camera cuts as normally there.
Yeah, we weren't watching the latest episode of the Blair Witch Project.
no. Oh, I see Trend in the chat. Trend.
Nice Trend.
Hi, Trend. But also, front row, the comment I made afterwards, after we got done watching it, it was the first time in a long time I noticed that it wasn't a chore to stay all 3 hours. We weren't. Me personally, that last hour is always a struggle, and rarely do I make it. But I wasn't. It wasn't like, oh God, we still got 45 minutes or so. I was, engaged almost the entire show.
Yeah,
still could have done without Logan Paul though.
Wow,
we're gonna get to that in a second. That's a SummerSlam discussion that I want to get to. I have some thoughts, as my wife would say. But I did notice that even things like with the Mysterios beat down in the back, the way that the camera followed them out into the hallway, they weren't trying to protect the shot. Like it was just live cam news footage almost. It felt like it was shot like a real action. Oh my God, we've stumbled across this terrible thing happening. We better capture that.
It didn't look as staged as most of them.
Right.
Yeah, I know it's backstage. It's a party. It's all staged. I get that. But even if you notice little things like the way that they were watching TV, they weren't off to the side in that stupid wrestling pose.
Staring at it sideways.
They were standing in front of the TV watching the show. And I thought that was an interesting thing. For me going forward, too, I'd like to see some of that. I'd like to see more of the Attitude Era-esque elements. And by that, I don't mean the gratuitous sexual stuff and all that stuff that we don't need to have on our TV anymore. But things like some of the grittiness, some of the more reality-based stuff. And I think Triple H is the guy who understands, and we've even seen some of it on social media already. Triple H has a much better understanding of how to utilize social media to tell stories. And he posted, Seth Rollins had posted, because Seth Rollins was supposed to have a match with Riddle, and Riddle was injured. Whether that's storyline or not, I don't know. And Seth posted something on Twitter, very out of character. Hey, I've been working hard for 6 months. I lost my spot on the card. This sucks. I appreciate everybody supporting me. Something to that effect. And Triple H quote tweeted it and said, I hear you. And I read that, and I didn't read that to mean him answering Seth Rollins. To me, it felt like he was talking to the fans. Just I hear you. I hear all the stuff online. I'm seeing all of the posts. And I'm going to, to me, that was him saying, stay tuned.
I'm working on something. Yeah.
Yeah.
I felt like that. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I definitely felt like that was something. So I'm looking forward. The other thing I think that Triple H can bring to the table now is a more cohesive handoff between NXT and the main roster from a superstar perspective. Absolutely. I think that Triple H, I don't think that he's going to allow people to be worked on and developed for 2 years and then completely scrapped and changed for Raw. I think you're going to see superstars like Braun Breaker and, Roxanne and all these other people. They're going to be brought up as is because they've spent all this time and energy building a character, and they've got a lot of money invested in people. And there's going to be tweaks. We understand that because the products are different. and the presentation's different, the audience is different. But at the same time, if something's working in NXT, just move it up and just adjust it a little bit.
What? No more Butch. What do you mean, no more Butch?
Well, and to that point, and I'm wearing this shirt today. Okay, this is a shirt from Eli Drake that he wore on Power when he was tag teaming with James Storm. I don't think this was ever made public. I don't think this was ever sold, but a friend of mine was kind enough to give it to me. And I'm a big fan of Eli Drake, and LA Knight was essentially Eli Drake, just an NXT version of Eli Drake. Now he's doing this other thing, and I'm like,
Max Dupree.
I think he's gonna. But it's the same thing at Max Dupree, right? He's a guy that can get anything.
Oh, and don't forget his sister, Maxine Dupree.
Right.
Yeah. And I think Trend is right to her point. We're already seeing more wrestling. We're seeing more in-ring action on both shows, and I think you're right. After SummerSlam, we'll see more of those changes. But I'm excited, and we know that he has much more investment in the NXT product than Vince did. So I think there's going to be more synergy, right? Whatever. However that works, right? Couple things too, and that includes like when they're moving NXT women over to the main roster. I still think that right now WWE is doing the best job of presenting women as athletes, as champions, as all of that stuff. I don't think the other companies, including AEW, and our friend is a champion there, I don't think that they're doing the best job that they can with the talent that they have. And I think WWE is doing a better job of that. But, and John, you guys will be more in tune with this than I am typically, but they announced this week the introduction we saw over in Japan, the introduction of the IWGP Women's title, which is a huge deal. And I think that's going to be decided in November, if I'm not mistaken, at the Stardom New Japan show.
Yeah.
So, John, what did you think when you saw this news the other day?
I was actually surprised, also very excited. While New Japan is the top wrestling promotion over in Japan, Stardom is the top female
promotion.
Right. Stardom is the top female. And how or why this never happened before, even as far as them putting a joint show on together. Why this hasn't happened before, I'm not 100%. But now, the way I read everything on it, and shout out to our friend Karen Peterson, who is my go-to encyclopedia for all things Japanese wrestling. What it's going to be is they are recognized by both companies, but it's going to be an IWGP title. It's not going to affect any of the Stardom titles per se, meaning if you're the IWGP Women's Tag Team Champions, you're not also the Tag Team Champions of Stardom. So while I want to say it's an addition, and certainly not addition by subtraction, because you will still be maintaining all of your Stardom belts, and now in addition of an IWGP, which now IWGP, who traditionally has not run female talent,
they've
or
never
female
had
matches,
there's never been a IWGP women's title,
right? Or even much less a female match that I'm aware of. I'm maybe way back, but
there's been a couple of women who have done run-ins and some spots, but I don't think that there's ever been an actual advertised match as part
match or anything. So now
they keep male and female wrestling separate over there for the most.
It appears at least after November, not anymore. Going forward, I think this is a huge opportunity, especially for folks and wrestlers in Stardom that people may or may not be too aware of or know of. Now they're going to jump on with all of this New Japan exposure and attention that they're getting. So I can't see this not being a huge success for both promotions.
Okay, so just a couple things. I do want to give a huge shout out to our friend Karen Peterson. Karen was on the show a few weeks ago with Neil and Ezra and myself. We had a great time. Karen and her friend Mio traveled up from Florida this past weekend, spent the weekend here with us, with me and Mrs. Front Row. And we went to the New Japan Strong taping and we watched the Ring of Honor pay-per-view. And we just had a wonderful weekend. They're such good people. And I recommend that, if you want to learn more about any of the Japanese promotions, go follow Karen at Hey Karen Sensei. And Mio is a very well-known, very talented artist. Go over to her Instagram. It's MIO_OKAZAKI Okazaki. She does some really, really cool stuff and has done a lot of design work for some very famous wrestlers who you would recognize. So go check them out. But I did want to talk what Trenda said in the chat here. Let me pop this up. New Japan isn't adding women. Let's just be clear. So the parent company that owns Stardom and New Japan are not merging the companies. They're running cross-promotional shows, right? They're still two distinct companies because the Japanese culture wants to preserve the way that their women's wrestling is presented, and they honor and highlight that in a very specific way. This is and I'd be interested to get Karen's perspective on this, on what the IWGP Women's title actually means. Is it a Stardom title? Is it a New Japan title? If it's a New Japan title, but you're not actually adding women to the New Japan roster, then how does that work? So we'll probably do some more digging into that, unless you've read more on that. All right.
No, I was just going to say the IWGP, that's the title. New Japan is the promotion. So it's NJPW is the wrestling promotion. So that's separate from IWGP, which is International Wrestling Grand Prix.
Okay. So I'll be interested to see how that's presented. I'm excited to see who the first champion is going to be. Are they going to develop a non-Japanese talent in Stardom to hold it? For my money, it should be a Japanese talent, a Joshi wrestler. So, and then the other question is, is there going to be any AEW involvement? Because AEW does have a partnership with New Japan, but on the women's side, their partnership is with Tokyo Joshi Pro, where Thunder Rosa just went and had that match with Yamashita-san, and she came over this week and defended her title as well.
And we know WWE has had dealings with different Japanese promotions.
Then your youngest champion was Shinsuke Nakamura. I didn't know.
Okay.
Learn something new every day.
That's a fun fact from MFR.
I'm excited to see where they're going to go. I love seeing more Japanese culture. We're big fans of the culture. We've been to Japan, and I'm excited to see where it's going to go. Before we get to SummerSlam, there's a couple of AEW things I wanted to hit on. Actually, before we talk AEW, the Ring of Honor Death Before Dishonor pay-per-view last weekend was about as perfect a pay-per-view as we're going to see anytime soon. In my mind, it was, the matches had time, and my concern with Ring of Honor was that it was not going to preserve the look, the feel, the flavor of traditional Ring of Honor. There were some tweaks. The production was certainly better. I felt like it was still gritty Ring of Honor matches.
Very much so.
It felt like it was over faster than you expect. You didn't feel like you had watched 2 hours of wrestling.
Right. Yeah. Having, of course, been a Ring of Honor, the original Ring of Honor fan since the inception, and attended many pay-per-views and live, and also watched. Yes, very much still had that traditional Ring of Honor feel. All the matches were well put together, well wrestled. We got, we came out of the Supercard in Dallas saying match of the year, Briscoe's FTR. Well, you can't say that no more, because in my opinion now we have a tie for the match of the year, Briscoe's FTR1 and Briscoe's FTR2. That was an absolute clinic on how to put on a pro wrestling match between four guys. Tag team wrestling, especially in Ring of Honor, has always mattered more so than in other organizations or promotions. And now that they were able to bring everything all together under this new banner, I'm very excited to see where they go in the future. You have a group of champions there now that are more than, pardon the pun, honored and deserving of holding those titles, and how they're going to defend them from here on out and who they're going to match them up against is going to be very, very interesting.
It is. And to that point, I was concerned that Tony Khan was just going to put a bunch of AEW wrestlers on the card. And then they turn around and announce that the Briscoes, not AEW talent, traditional, hardcore, like iconic Ring of Honor tag team, have been signed to a Ring of Honor exclusive long-term contract. Okay, well, they just planted their flag in the ground and said, no, this is Ring of Honor. Mm-hmm. And one of the things, too, is there were 11 matches on the card. Like, there were 4 matches on the pre-show. The longest match on the card was, of course, the tag match, which was like 43 minutes long. And that it should have been given that amount of time. It was amazing. Mm-hmm. The second longest match on the card was actually the women's match at just under 18 minutes. So that tells me that they're willing to invest the time and energy into presenting their women's champion, Mercedes Martinez, as a credible champion who deserves to be in those spots. And holy shit, she and Serena Deeb tore the house down. Like,
sure did.
That was a technical masterpiece.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. It's hard to pick a favorite out of that night because, to be honest, all of the matches were good, and I was particularly glad to see that they were able to get the last of the missing Ring of Honor titles resolved, and that being the Ring of Honor 6-man tag team champions, which we saw the Righteous go against Dalton Castle and the Boys, and we have new 6-man champions in Dalton Castle and the Boys. So, yet again,
I still say that sounds like a country music group.
Yeah, but as we saw, it is anything but RA. But still, I kind of though feel like AEW is trying to take a bit of that shine because if you paid attention this week, they've also announced a 6-man or a trios title of their own. But then again, if we look down the line, I've always thought of if done properly, you could have this other brand with Ring of Honor that at various points or whatever, you could have a Ring of Honor champion come over to AEW and say, hey, I'm a real champion, you're a real champion. And not even for, titles per se, but just the matches you can make up with that. And now, seemingly, we'll be able to do that with 6-man matches as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to Trenda's point, too, when Claudio won the title from Jonathan Gresham, Claudio is Cesaro in WWE, and he had big success over there, and he's a WWE guy, and blah, blah, blah. The moment he stepped foot in the Ring of Honor ring, I was like, oh, no, that's Ring of Honor Claudio. Like, I didn't think about any of that other stuff. He wrestled the Ring of Honor.
He was no longer Cesaro. He was Claudio.
Yeah. Yep.
Right, exactly.
Or he had come back to Claudio.
Yeah, and to see him hold that title, like you could see the emotion of what it meant to him to hold that title in this new version. But to your point, John, if you have a Mercedes Martinez who has, if they build a proper women's division in Ring of Honor, some really hard hitting, strong style, Ring of Honor style women's matches, and then she circles back to face Thunder down the road. Now, because we've seen Thunder and Mercedes tear the house down on the independent circuit.
Absolutely.
In the year just before Mercedes signed with AEW, they had, I think, 3 or 4 matches in a 12-month period that were just bangers.
Yeah.
You put that on an AEW pay-per-view with champion versus champion or Battle of the Belts or whatever it is. You can count me in. I think my least favorite match was the Samoa Joe and Jay Lethal match. I love Samoa Joe. Okay. I don't think that was his best match. And Joe
didn't look 100%.
No, he didn't.
And that could be for any number of reasons. I mean, we haven't really seen him on TV or anything.
Yeah,
Is it a nagging injury? Is it something else? Haven't seen it many times before in Ring of Honor. Just to me, it was a great match. You know, both guys did exactly what they were supposed to do. It just didn't. It didn't seem the level of what I've seen in the past from a Jay Lethal Samoa Joe match in Ring of Honor.
Yeah, and so this brings me to my next topic. Wheeler Yuta. Like, this guy is having the year of a lifetime, and it's deserved. Like, he's worked really hard. We've seen him on independent shows. We saw him in PWX. We've seen him in a multitude of places. But he is one of those guys that's, you give him an inch and he's going to take it a mile. He can take anything and make it great, and he's a very young guy. So to see what he's doing, and so his match with Daniel Garcia at the pay-per-view was a great match. But then you fast forward to Dynamite, and he cuts a, was it on Dynamite or Rampage? It might have been Rampage, but he cut a promo with Chris Jericho. He held his own on the mic with Chris Jericho. Not an easy thing to do. So now you've got a guy who's sharpening his skills on the mic. He's already great in the ring. I think big things are in store for him. And then you look at the other side of that match. Daniel Garcia beat Bryan Danielson in like an incredible match. So they're doing a good job of crossovers and using Ring of Honor to showcase people. I'm looking forward to seeing what their TV product is going to look like, and I hope they announce it at some point soon.
I think that's the only thing that disappointed me about the pay-per-view is the fact that we didn't get a clear picture on when and how we're going to see Ring of Honor on TV. Yeah.
So, and Ari, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. We just mentioned the 6-man tag titles, and on the AEW side, we obviously saw the Young Bucks hinting at sort of reunited with Hangman Page, and the last time I saw them in person was at a Ring of Honor show, and they were 6-man tag champions in Ring of Honor with Hangman. Does it feel like a retread, or has it been long enough where this is still fresh to a new audience?
I think the Trios title in AEW, yeah, they announced it, but I don't think it'll actually be on AEW TV as much as the other ones. I think it'll be more on like ROH TV, or they might do, crossover teams and stuff more with the Trios belts.
Okay.
I don't necessarily see it as a retread because people have been asking for Trios titles in AEW. Fans have been asking for it as well. So,
yeah, I think that's kind of a more of a nod that even if
they liked it in Ring of Honor.
Right. As well, ask any AEW fan. Wrestling didn't exist before AEW, so in their minds, it never existed. So now that they have it, like I said, I don't know why, since you already have it in Ring of Honor, but if anything, it might give.
You have 6-man Impact as well, do you not?
No, there's no 6-man title in Impact.
I thought there was.
Former was. I don't believe so.
Oh, but NWA was bringing them back, weren't they? Just like they are with all these other titles.
Yeah, I know NWA just announced another women's title, but I don't know if they're bringing back the 6-man tag or not. They already have enough tag. They have enough titles there, and I think that's my only concern is, like, most of the companies are very heavy with the amount of titles they have. I understand WWE, like, they unified their titles, and that's fine, but they're still carrying them out there as 2 separate titles. Even though they're telling us that they're unified, they're still holding both championships, which indicates to the fans that they're still champion of 2 separate things. So, and we'll talk about that in a second. I did want to talk about SummerSlam a little bit, and we're probably going to end a few minutes early tonight so that folks can get their snacks and drinks before SummerSlam. But let's run through this card because we talked a bit about this the other day. Like, I didn't think that the stories going into SummerSlam were particularly captivating, but this week they did a pretty good job, especially on SmackDown, of making me care. And the other thing is, I'm looking at this card. The best pay-per-views to me is when you look at the card and you can't pick clear winners for most of the matches. Then you really want to watch because you're like, I can't pick a winner in XYZ match, right? Yeah. This is Front Row's point. It does water down the significance of the titles, especially when you keep introducing titles that now don't have any history. You've got a whole,
and you have such a limited roster anyway. You're like you said, you're stacking belts.
Yeah. So what happens is you've got 6 championships that only get on TV twice a month or once a month.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's take a look at the SummerSlam card. I'm not a fan of Logan Paul. I think he's a shit human. I don't. And from a presentation standpoint, they're presenting him as a good guy versus a bad guy, Miz. Well, that's not how the audience views it. They're booing Logan Paul. They're cheering the Miz. I don't understand what the hell they're doing. This entire match to me is throwaway. I do care who wins. I want Miz to win, but that's only because I don't like Logan Paul. And it doesn't.
They're presenting it one way, WWE is, but the fans perceive it the complete opposite.
Yeah, they're not, and I agree with you 100%. Front Row. I really would like. It's probably not designed this way, but I would like to see Miz win, just because I think Logan Paul's a shit human being. But it's going to be. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the live crowd reacts to all this tonight. I hate to say this as a wrestling fan, but I'm more interested in the crowd reaction than the match. You can't expect too much out of the match. Miz is a great worker, always has been, and will make Logan Paul.
Otherwise, he wouldn't be with the company as long as he has been.
Right, and he's going to make Logan Paul look way better than he's supposed to right now. But like I said, I'm more interested to see how the crowd takes to all this than the actual match.
Okay, so let's move on. The next match listed on the card is one that I'm very interested in, and one that is really complex if you look at it from a booking standpoint. Ronda Rousey is challenging Liv for her SmackDown championship.
SmackDown title. Yeah.
It's not a rematch because, well, I guess technically it is because she cashed in, but whatever. But so Liv did cash in her Money in the Bank briefcase. She did a roll up, and it was a steel win. It was it was whatever it was.
How long has it been since the Money in the Bank was successful cash in? The last one, because it's been a while, hasn't it?
Well, I think almost every women's match has resulted in a successful cash in, right? And they're almost always immediate. Like, I don't know why that women Carmella carried it for a while, but
the only caveat to that was, I believe, was Asuka's.
Yeah, because
was that a failed cash in?
No, that was when Becky got pregnant. And
instead of a cash for the belt, it was a title.
Right.
Like a swap or something, yeah.
Instead, when she pulled the briefcase down, instead of a contract being in there, it was the actual title.
Actual belt, right.
Yeah, that's fair. So that doesn't really count.
Right.
But so from a match perspective, Liv Morgan needs to win clean, in my mind, to cement her as a credible champion. However, we're talking about Ronda Rousey. We're talking about UFC Hall of Famer. We're talking about somebody who's been a champion on Raw and SmackDown and is just, on a different level. I'm a little, and I listened to Busted Open today, and Andreas and Ryan were talking about this, and one of the ways out of this, or one of the solutions to this problem of how you book the end of this match, if Ronda just goes complete heel. And Ronda is a much better heel, like way better heel than she is a babyface. If she just goes nuts and injures Liv, or even just gets herself DQ'd, thereby, Liv retaining, nobody's hurt, and it sets you on a path where we're now going to see a vicious side of Ronda. So, John, are you do you have a favorite in this match?
Strictly as a fan, yes, I want to see Liv retain and go on. Again, the few inherent problems I have with it are the same that you described. It's Ronda Rousey, that Ronda Rousey, the baddest woman on the planet. And just try to suspend disbelief all you want. There's no scenario that a Liv Morgan can beat Ronda Rousey. However, this is pro wrestling, so anything is possible. I think to me the bigger issue is you can make a story work or something to have Liv retain. They just had the belt on Ronda, and had this great run up with Liv to get to the title. Why are you going to flip it back to Ronda just to basically do it again, or to try to tell a different story? Also, it's funny to say, what is Ronda? Is Ronda a heel? Is Ronda a babyface? There's no real definition to what she is right now, and I think that's why, even her title run kind of didn't seem like it was all that much, because fans didn't know what to do. Did they want to cheer her? Did they want to boo her? So I don't see them flipping the title back to Ronda this quickly. And again, with still no clear role, unless they do something during the match or at the end of the match to define it. I don't see them doing it with no real purpose or anything for Ronda.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't see why they would. I mean, it makes it look like obviously Ronda's going to get the belt back. So, what was the point of putting it on Liv? But you would think they'd want to leave it on Liv, so there's got to be something. They may have set it up on SmackDown where there'll be a, Natalya or Sonya Deville interference that causes, Liv to retain that way. So neither of them look bad, but still, it doesn't make sense why they would put those two against each other so quick.
And it sucks too, because I typically don't like to see major title feuds like this end over and over again with interference or wonky finishes. But when you have such a mismatch in combat skill, you almost have to rely on it. So I will. I think this one's going to be, man. Yeah, and I think my wife agrees with you. Natty interference. Natty's been sort of, she feuded with Ronda, and then now they're friends. Or the other thing too is you could have a reintroduction of Shayna Baszler, but team her with a heel Ronda. You have those two very credible martial artists, UFC, MMA, like experts, veterans, and they beat down Liv, and Ronda gets disqualified. Great. Now we're off to the races. Now we're in a good spot.
Mm-hmm.
Because then that all, yeah, and they would be unbeatable. And that also brings me to my follow-up point is, what the hell are they doing with the women's tag titles after Sasha and Naomi left? They were supposed to
they were supposed to announce a tournament, and they never have.
Yeah. So now, what if you have Ronda and Shayna as tag champions? Okay, now we've got all kinds of places you can go with that. They need more tag teams. They only have like 2, but I mean, they could figure stuff out. They could bring people up from NXT. There's not a shortage of bodies to put out there in tag matches to get beat up by Shayna and Ronda. So for Bobby Lashley versus Theory, Theory's challenging Bobby Lashley for the United States title. The weird thing is so this now all plays into the main event, because we know that Theory has the Money in the Bank briefcase. Is he going to get involved? If Bobby Lashley beats the shit out of him and he's not in a position to get involved later in the show, then it changes how you're going to view the match in the main event. So to me, I think Bobby just runs through him and makes quick work of him, and then that preserves Theory for the end of the show if they use him.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Art.
I was just gonna say, I think they'll put Lashley Theory like early in the show, probably within the first, 2 or 3 matches.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That way, it'll give Theory the time between to rest for whatever they're going to use him for. Because he's going to run in, he's going to. They've already, they've been hinting at it too long.
Yeah. The bigger story here is not the match.
And then they had Heyman and Theory talking after that segment as well. So.
Yeah, the bigger story is not the match. So I agree 100% with you, all right. It's going to be early on and probably a quick match. Even if they don't pay off the cash in tonight, if they set it up that way, you're still teasing it out. Now you have to stick and stay to see the end of the show to see if he actually does come out or whatever. So,
and they could have him come out and not cash in, get beat up before he gets a chance to.
Yeah, they are, but I think
cash in for a later date.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a thought about that, but I want to put a pin in that until we get to the end, to the main event. McAfee versus Corbin, like everything Pat McAfee does is entertaining to me, and Baron Corbin is woefully underrated as a talent. He's really good in the ring. He's incredibly skilled as an actor, as a performer, and the stuff that they did this week where Corbin was ringside and the popcorn, and even to the point where McAfee and Michael Cole were trying to do their promotional stuff for SummerSlam, Corbin just kept talking over them, ruining the entire promotional segment, which
like an annoying fan.
Yeah, exactly. You don't see that. I don't think you would have seen that under Vince, because I think Vince would have said, "Shut them up so we can get our promotional stuff done, and then go back to it." But no, it felt like a real fan who was just being an asshole to the commentator, and then they got into it, and we saw what we saw. McAfee gets kicked in the jewels, but like McAfee is a next level talent from a performer's perspective. He's not Bryan Danielson in the ring, but he can wrestle enough to go in there and have an entertaining match and have a brawl. He's a big dude. He's a big athlete. He's an NFL superstar. So I think McAfee comes away with this win.
Yeah, I
do too.
And it's my pick for match of the night. I think this one by far is going to be the most fun to watch.
Okay. So most fun, but not necessarily the best technical match.
Right. It'll be the most entertaining one.
The match that I initially didn't care about was the Mysterios versus the Judgment Day, because I didn't feel like they were doing a good job telling a story. It was all very cookie cutter up until Dominic hinted at maybe wanting to join Judgment Day. I think tonight is the night that Dominic finally turns on Ray.
I wouldn't be surprised if they do. I'm thinking, though, they win tonight, they keep it going into Monday, and he turns on, they do, some sort of little promo or something in the ring on Raw this coming Monday, and he turns on him there. Let him have the, feel-good moment at SummerSlam to keep everybody, especially coming off Ray's 20th anniversary and all that. Let him have a nice moment in the ring. Continue that into Monday Night Raw. Then Ray blasts him from behind, and the turn is done. But either way, though, only thing I could say is Judgment Day goes over. That's the perfect point for Ray for Dominic to turn on him.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I guess you go either way, but yeah, I think we're at the point, and even looking at social media a little bit afterwards, everybody wants Dominic to turn at this point. Everybody's just waiting for it to happen. So
yeah,
if they're listening like they say they do, we may see it tonight.
we'll see.
Well,
So
Dom
ahead,
does look more like Eddie than he does Ray, so that'd be perfect thing for him to lie, cheat, and steal.
Mm.
and that was a funny little thing this week because Dominic's sister, Ray's daughter, previously had an on-screen relationship with Buddy Murphy, now Buddy Matthews, and then she had a face-off with Rhea Ripley on Raw, but Rhea Ripley in real life is actually dating Buddy Matthews. So there's this whole subtext to it, which is interesting. We have a couple more minutes. I want to talk about very quickly the Usos versus the Street Profits. And Angelo Dawkins was on Busted Open this week talking about how they've never actually beaten the Usos clean in a pinning situation. So I think this is their time. I think this is the problem is that you're then if you take away titles from the Usos, then the bloodline has some weakness, right? So from a long-term storytelling perspective, you should keep the titles on them. But from a fan's perspective, man, I'd love to see the Street Profits beat the Usos tonight.
Sure. Yeah, most definitely. But yeah, it's one of those things. The Street Profits are due. The Usos are due to drop. I can't think of any other tag team right now, either right now or in the future, that is on the same level as the Street Profits are to drop the belts to. So if you don't drop them tonight to the Street Profits, now you're left with, okay, who, arguably underneath the Usos, the Street Profits are the top tag team in WWE. So if not them, then who?
Yeah.
And you still have to factor in the second dirtiest player in the game, JEFF, JARREGG.
No, that's a good point. We'll see how he factors into the match. And then, of course, we
the Usos did, super kick him to where he was standing on his head on SmackDown.
That's true.
Great
But then we have
Great
Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch. And this is interesting. I would like to see Bianca beat Becky in 26 seconds, like she lost in 26 seconds. I don't normally advocate for a quick women's match, but I think it would work. And then you have Becky Lynch just continue to do this downward spiral of her character that we've been seeing over the last several months since WrestleMania. And I think that Becky is doing a tremendous job. So my pick is for Bianca to retain her title.
Yeah, I like that. Or have her beat her in 25 seconds or something goofy like that.
Yeah. Of course, and then we go to the main event. And for me, Roman and Brock are going to have a Roman and Brock match. We've seen it a million times. They're going to have a great match. It's going to be a fight. People are probably going to bleed. It's going to be awesome. I would almost like to see Theory run to the ring for his cash in and then have Sami Zayn take him out because we haven't seen him that much lately. And he is the honorary Uso as part of the bloodline. And he can come to the save and then on Raw the next night or on Monday, tell Paul Heyman, look what I did for you. Look what I did for the bloodline.
I like that. I do like that because, it's kind of Sammy making his bones with the bloodline. Now they have to accept him because, he went out and did this for him and he kept everything intact as far as Roman. Yeah, I like that. That's not bad. They should really sit in on our late night booking meetings because we can save the world. But
we have some stellar ideas.
As an added caveat to that, do we see a Heyman turn helping Austin because he's tired of being stuck in the middle?
No. Go to your room and think about what you've done.
But then he can turn on Austin later because Paul Heyman always turns on everybody. So
yeah,
that's Paul Heyman.
So okay, we have just a couple minutes left. I want your quick predictions on if there's any returns or debuts tonight, and where would you put them?
I would not that I know exactly where to put them, but I would like to see a Bayley return. I think we're about due for that, especially given the kind of light on talent side the women's division overall is. Not 100% sure where she fits in, but it would be nice to see her, and then we could figure that out afterwards. Send the crowd home.
I have an idea on that, John.
Okay.
we talked about Bianca beating Becky quickly. Have the heel Bailey return, because it turns out she's actually a really good heel. We didn't think she would be, but she is.
Mhm.
Have her return, and there's your feud, Bailey and Bianca. And then now Becky's so far away from the title that she's just in this downward spiral, never getting opportunities, losing all this stuff, and it would play to both of those things. All right, who would you like to see tonight?
Though he just showed up on Impact, I don't think he's officially signed there yet. So Gargano could return because he was, a Triple H guy. And they don't have any
Yeah.
place for Seth Rollins. So they could have Triple H come out and say, Seth, I know you were supposed to be on the card. Since you're not, here's your opponent, and bring in.
I love that idea. And once he's reintroduced, put him back together with Ciampa. Give us DIY.
Yeah.
Just let's get the band back together.
Yeah.
I know we have just another minute. There's one thing I wanted to complain about. Here's my rant of the week. 923. You guys know what I'm talking about. Every effing week. Every fucking week on AEW at 923 is a women's match. No matter what. And it's almost always the same duration.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you think so little about your women's division that you can't put them in the main event. They did main events Rampage, and that's fair. But on Dynamite, every week, and we've been following this for, 4 to 6 weeks now? It's every week. And this week it was 924, and only because there was a commercial break.
Right.
And this week, we had the champ.
Plus, they do the match, for example, the championship match. It was picture in picture. Move that to someplace else in the,
Right.
in your
goddamn
broadcast.
show.
Don't do the picture in picture on a championship match.
You had a championship match between
And the
Thunder
championship match not being the main event. That's a whole other story. So
that's my piggyback rant onto that. I went ballistic. That is just basically what Tony Khan did, was say, you're all of you women, including my champion in the women's division, are no better than a men's singles match. Because let's be 100% honest. Yes, it was a returning Bryan Danielson. Yes, it was a fantastic match, but it was nothing more than a male singles match that was your main event over your champion.
the only the main legitimate champion.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the one there's no interim or anything. Thunder Rosa is the women's world champion.
Yeah, exactly.
And even that wasn't worth past 923.
And so
I don't understand.
We just saw Thunder Rosa go to Japan and have this amazing kick-ass Japanese strong style match with Miyu Yamashita. Yamashita comes here to the United States. They did a nice video package. Yeah, I'll give them credit. The production people did a nice job with the video package, which we saw on social media earlier in the day, and they played it. Did they actually play? Yeah, they did play it on TV.
Yeah.
And Thunder cut a great promo. She spoke Japanese, English, and Spanish in the promo. Really, really good. And thanks to my friend Karen for smartening me up on some of the stuff, the language. Yeah. Well, there's some intricacies to what was used, and it was spoken in a very not disrespectful, but a condescending way. It was awesome. I'll explain it later. But you've got the champion in an 11-minute match, 3 of which were in picture, and that's it. And then what happens next week? Oh, she's again has to face Britt Baker again next week in a tag match.
And it was a match with errors in the match, where the match in Japan didn't have any. I saw.
Right. I agree, Trenda. Yeah, huge shout out to our friends Thunder Rosa and Brian Rosa. So I hope that she gets better opportunities, and I think that I'm very much done with the Britt Thunder story. I understand it was a great story and a great feud and all that stuff. I think next week's match should be Tony turning on Thunder, and a heel Tony against the babyface Thunder. Take that to All Out, and there's your title match. Or you start to build Chris Statlander, who's in another storyline towards a championship challenge. But I'm very much done with with the DMD and this entire storyline. Let her go do something else.
Yeah.
Could you possibly see a case where Britt pins Tony in the match, and then afterwards Thunder and Tony have an exchange that causes a turn? And
Yeah.
You can work it a bunch of different ways, but I agree 100%. The last scenario I absolutely want is the DMD, which everybody knows I says don't mean dick. Nowhere near the title. Nothing to do with the title. Back of the line, Doc. Back of the line.
All right, guys, we got 2 minutes left till SummerSlam. I promised you we'd be out of here in time. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight and following along. John, R.A., appreciate you jumping on tonight. We had a great show, a lot of fun, and I'm sure we're going to do it all again soon. R.A., where can folks find you on the socials?
You can find me at Dead Ahead RA on pretty much all platforms.
John?
And I am at Twisted Metal Fab on all the socials. That's Instagram and Twitter. And also remember, hashtag Nation's Corner on location, out and about as I always am, and we always are. Tag your shows if you're out there, Nation. Let us know you're there. Let us know. And please check out the interview I did here the other night with Marcello Squirewell from Capital Championship Wrestling.
Yeah.
And I will be heading back there next week.
Great interview.
Yeah, and I'll be back there next week for their anniversary show, Blood in the Sand, August 6th. So.
Awesome. And I'm PW Front Row across all the socials. You can find us on Twitter at Nation's Corner, all other platforms at The Nation's Corner. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Hope you all have a great week. Enjoy SummerSlam and Ric Flair's last match, which we didn't get a chance to talk about, is tomorrow night. Enjoy that as well. See y'all later.